Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what is the most bullshit reason for a teacher to give you a bad grade? I broke my right arm in 3rd grade. I write with my right hand. The teacher gave me a bad grade because my handwriting with my left hand was barely legible. I've got dysgraphia, which is basically a medical reason for absolutely shitty handwriting. I got a special allowance to use a device, I forget what it was called, that was basically a digital typewriter. It amounted to a keyboard with a simple B/W LCD screen. You could hook it to a computer or printer to easily print stuff off it. It didn't have internet or even a calculator, it only functioned to type. One teacher wouldn't let me use it, despite her legally not being able to do that. Little 6th grade me didn't know she was literally breaking the law, and went with it. We had a test and I got marked down for poor penmanship. My mom asked me why I didn't use my typing device, and I told her the teacher wouldn't allow it. She raised hell. She fucking destroyed that teacher, and for the rest of the year, despite my teacher's objections, I was allowed to use my device anytime I wanted. Edit, dysgraphia to dysgraphia. Spellcheck thinks both are wrong, but the second one is correct. The Alpha Smart. They stopped making them, but you can buy them used on eBay for $20 to $30 bucks. Ye gods, my inbox. She raised hell. She fucking destroyed that teacher. Good. Punishing a kid for a disability is all kinds of bullshit, and super clearly illegal even before the ADA, Civil Rights Act, 1964 made it illegal to discriminate. IDEA, which strengthened protections and services specifically for students, was 1975. ADA wasn't passed until 1990. Right around the same age I knew someone who broke their right arm during the school year and had to do all their assignments left-handed. I saw how difficult it was for them and thought, wow, I better start practicing writing with my left just in case. This is the only reason I'm pseudo-ambidextrous now. I never broke anything, knock on wood, but as an adult I did manage to get tendinitis in my right wrist working on a project with a deadline, and that's the only time my practice came in handy, no pun intended. That's crazy, but it helped you in the long run, and that's the best part. I would hate to be in that situation again. This would be an A paper from some other students, but you can do better. I got a C. And no other feedback on how to improve. Edit, thanks for the gold and for all the comments. It seems I'm not alone in this one. Your mistake was being too awesome on your previous papers. Apparently so. I didn't think I'd phoned it in on that one, but maybe it seemed like it. Still, that comment really should have come with at least one area for improvement. Not a bad grade, but I remember I was so close to being the first person to ever score a 100% on my 10th grade Spanish final. The one question I got wrong was: ¿Qué tipo de comida es el pescado? What type of food is fish? A. El carne, meat. B. Lane fruta, fruit. C. El pan, bread. D. Lane verdura, vegetable. I of course picked meat, and got it wrong because my teacher insisted that fish isn't meat. She's a Catholic and eats fish on Fridays during Lent. According to her, the correct answer is fruit, because fish are sometimes known as the fruit of the sea. What the actual fuck? Cram your 99%, senora. I've had bad Spanish teachers, but WUT. Removed. My girlfriend of 5+ years is Catholic, and she has yet to explain to me why fish isn't meat to my satisfaction. According to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, meat is considered something that comes only from animals that live on land, like chicken, cows, sheep or pigs. Fish are considered a different category of animal. https://amp/s/local.com/20140313 good question, why is seafood considered meat /amp/. In the 90s my family didn't have a computer and I had no access to one. I spent a lot of time on a handwritten assignment for school and the teacher gave me a B, writing as a comment, I would have given you an A if you had typed it up on a computer. I'm still bitter. I knew a girl in the early 2000s who used a typewriter because she didn't have a printer or a floppy disk reader in her computer. Back then in school we were offered an optional class to learn 10-finger typing. It would be done on typewriters in the school, but we would also get homework assignments. My parents didn't have a typewriter or a computer, so I signed up for that course hoping I could talk my parents into getting a computer. Of course they got a typewriter instead, which they had no use for. At the end of the class I was the only one who didn't get the best possible grade, because my homework assignments would have typos in them. The rest of the children had computers at home and would use Word with autocorrect to type out the assignments, so everyone besides me got full points on all assignments. I have no idea how the teacher didn't notice this, but I was not one to tell on others. In high school, I used the word lascivious to describe a character in a book and my teacher didn't know what the word meant. So logically, he took off a point. You just reminded me of a teacher that thought evinced was just a misspelling and took off points. Still salty about that. A tar corrected the burden of proof to the burden of providing proof. Edit. I also had a psychology teacher in high school circle the word neo-Nazi in my paper about American History X with a question mark and an arrow pointing to the word American, which he had underlined 3 times, even though the word neo-Nazi was literally used in the movie's description. Edit 2. Now I'm just remembering things that pissed me off. A school nurse told me I couldn't possibly have diarrhea due to something I ate because I didn't have a fever. When my mom showed up, I mentioned the spicy foods I ate the night before, and the nurse said, "Oh, he didn't mention the spicy foods. Why does that matter? You said it wasn't possible. Your statement left no room for exceptions." I always had to deal with stuff like that when going to the nurse's office. It's like they learn of one possible explanation for an ailment and apply it to every case. What did they think it was a misspelling of? Oh my god, you just reminded me of the time my high school teacher didn't believe unison was a word. That's ridiculous. She should know a unison is one buffalo standing by itself. If there are 2 buffaloes then it's bison. Because he didn't read my paper. It was a university class where a tar was responsible for grading the papers. He was clearly overwhelmed and just reading introductions and grading based on them alone. I had a 2-part introduction that fully addressed the prompt, but as he only read the first part I got my paper back with a big C at the top. I ended up getting full credit after I challenged the initial grade. Glad you had a better result. My first large college paper, for a pre-Civil War history class, freshman year came back with a giant red D written on it with practically no feedback. I was in a writing program and I had always excelled at essays, so I was sort of shocked. Went to the professor and asked him about the grade and lack of instruction. He sighed, looked down and said, "Westhoff, I don't like you." He went on and on after that with some bullshit reasons, but apparently the big issue came from the first week of class. He was talking about manifest destiny and said something like, "Now you have to remember, back in those days there were 50 to 100 miles between towns out in the western USA. And I raised my hand and said that there was still 50 to 100 miles between towns in the western US. He said I was exaggerating and I told him I wasn't because that's where I grew up. That paper was 40% of our grade. He refused to change the grade or even reread it. I scraped a C+ in that class and I was so fucking proud of that grade even though it was the worst grade I received in my life. At the end of the semester, I decided to ask him for his grading documentation to see if I could challenge the paper with the school, but he claimed he had already thrown it away. I found out later that was bullshit too, but I didn't press any further. You should have pressed, at the very least so he doest try that bullshit with someone else. She gave me a 0 because she didn't think I read the book. She said I would have gotten a 75% if she thought I read it. 75% of the test questions right supposedly means I didn't actually do the reading, still one of those things that pisses me off even 10 years later. Why wouldn't you give her a verbal synopsis of the book when she said you didn't read it? Because they didn't read it, clearly. Edit, comma. As a high school freshman I think I was too intimidated to challenge her. I regret not making a bigger deal about it at the time. It really hurt my confidence with some teachers in the following year. Literally the first day of school she went around the classroom and asked how many books each of us read over the summer. I said 6. She asked seriously. But really, how many? 6. Why is that so hard to believe? I don't know exactly why, she just didn't like me. I never really had an issue with any other teacher and I was a pretty good student. I have my suspicions of why she didn't like me. A class most students breezed through with an A and reading Sparkotes was a class she micromanaged me like a hawk in. Still baffles me to this day, but it is what it is. Wrote in Chicago format and lost points. The assignment instructions said to write in Chicago format. Edit, to anyone curious, I did try and point this out. Basically still lost points, but they upped the final grade. Extra edit, lotta questions on Chicago. Here's a brief overview, https://purdue.edu/al/research_and_citation. It's common in social studies/history courses in my experience. Basically, when thinking Chicago, think the footnote 1. This reminds me of an assignment in which lost marks for not double spacing my work. I did double space my work. Back before I learned that double spacing meant 2 space between lines, I thought it meant between words. No one ever told little old me, and that just made sense to me. A space goes between 2 words, so a double-spaced paper must have 2 between them.